Good afternoon. Welcome to everyone, to the fellows and staff and family who are here in New York City Emergency Management's Emergency Operations Center in person, and welcome to all the people that we know are streaming, many supervisors, families and friends of the fellows, families and friends of John and the extended Solomon family, and others. Welcome to our 9th fellowship graduation. For those of you who I haven't met or I haven't seen in a while, my name is Christina Farrell. I'm the Deputy Commissioner for External Affairs here at New York City Emergency Management. And I will speak for the whole New York City Emergency Management team to say how happy we are to be here today. We look forward to this day every year. As everyone knows, the situation around the world and specifically in New York City continues to evolve. New York City Emergency Management is welcoming back all of our employees in some form this week, as you may have seen many city agencies are. And happily, we were able to invite the majority of our fellows here for this event in person, which is really fantastic because there obviously haven't been a lot of in-person opportunities this year. In addition to the graduation today, we are providing all the fellows the opportunity to get a headshot taken professionally with our photographer that they can use moving forward as they progress in their career. And for anyone who was involved in the Solomon Family Fellowship event a couple months ago, we received feedback that the fellows may be able to use a go bag. So we will also give you a go bag on your way out, so to make sure you're 100% prepared. If anyone watching does not have a go bag, we can send you some information. I'm sure Jim can let you know what that is, but I would not be doing my job if I were not advocating that everyone in these times have a go bag. Enough of the PSA. I will let all the other qualified people today talk about the importance of the fellowship, but I just wanted to say a few thank yous to all the fellows, first of all, for their hard work and their enthusiasm, which definitely shone through even through Zoom and Teams and all our other virtual platforms. I want to thank the supervisors for their guidance and their continuity within the program. I want to thank my management team, who is always terrific, who always smiles and says, yes, I can do that, even though 2 hours ago you asked me to do the exact opposite. But I will do it smiling and pretend that didn't happen, so I appreciate all their patience and hard work. And I want to thank the Solomon family and friends who continue to support this fellowship and the training of these fellows, many of whom end up working in city government and other agencies. And we have 4 fellow alumni, including Amanda Kravchuk, who runs the program, working with us right now here. So we are very blessed. So now I'd like to introduce Andy Diamora, who's our first Deputy Commissioner and also a huge fellowship fan, to say a few words. Thank you.
Hey everybody, good afternoon. I'm Andy Diamora, the first Deputy Commissioner here, and I just want to say what a thrill it is to be here. On Cinco de Mayo, this is our first in-person real gathering that we've had since COVID, as Christina alluded to before. So I'm just honored to be here to celebrate this moment with you. So I want to recognize this year's 10 outstanding fellows who really shone for their agencies. More than other years, of course, the fellowship experience was different for each fellow based on what has been going on at their agency and respect to the COVID response. Scaling up for vaccination efforts and other emergencies that never seem to stop coming, such as snowstorms, severe thunderstorms, and power outages. I know that the fellows have each learned a lot this year and that the experience will serve them well as they progress in their careers. I also want to thank the supervisors for each of the fellows who took the time over the year to mentor their fellows, bring them up to speed in this ever-changing environment, and who also participated in special events the fellowship held throughout the year. And a special thank you to our terrific fellowship administrative team, Erica, Amanda, and even Ira. Thanks, Ira. They keep the fellowship running and even introduce virtual escape from outings to the group. And finally, definitely goes without saying, a special thank you to the Solomons, especially Jim, Vanita, Abby, and Ann and Dick, whose generosity and love of New York City make this fellowship possible and keep John's legacy alive, which is so meaningful. So could you give a round of applause for the Solomons? As many of you know, last week, our former Commissioner Deanne Criswell was sworn in as the FEMA administrator, which is an amazing thing. And New York City Emergency Management welcomed John Scrivani as our next commissioner. I know Commissioner Scrivani is happy to learn about this special program, and he's going to be excited to participate in the next one for sure. So before she left, we got a treat. Administrator Criswell did a video message for each and every one of you, so we're going to go to that now.
Hello and welcome. I am very happy to be here for the graduation of the 2020-2021 class of John D. Solomon Fellows. I know many of you, but for those that I have not met, I am Deanne Criswell, FEMA Administrator and former Commissioner at New York City Emergency Management. It is truly an honor to work in public service and has brought with it exciting opportunities to mentor and develop the future leaders of tomorrow. When I was previously at FEMA, I helped to create the FEMA Corps program, allowing young professionals to hone their skills while serving communities impacted by disaster. The John D. Solomon Fellowship for Public Service upholds that vision, and it has been an honor to witness the development of these fellows firsthand and know that these ideals are held at the national and local levels. Over this past year, New York City Emergency Management and the city at large has managed one of the most complex responses that I have seen. As the city continues to respond to COVID while also focusing efforts on recovery, I had the pleasure to witness this year's class of fellows take on challenging tasks and projects to enhance the city's plans and protocols, to engage with the public, and to work alongside our emergency managers to strengthen this great city. I know that the 10 fellows graduating today will go on to accomplish just as much as the more than 70 fellows that have graduated before them. I want to take a minute to emphasize the importance of this fellowship in New York City and to thank you all for being a part of it. Over the past 9 years, the program has had 70 outstanding fellows who have worked with 15 different agencies for a total of over 26,000 hours. Each of the fellows here today is an extraordinary example of the leaders of tomorrow. And I know that the enthusiasm and energy you brought to your work has re-inspired your mentors and reminded them why we all decided to pursue a career in public service. And of course, the fellowship this year, just like everything over the past year, is different than the previous years. I know this fellowship was created back in the fall of 2012, which of course corresponded to Hurricane Sandy wreaking havoc across New York City. Much like that first class of fellows who 6 weeks into their fellowship were thrust into new roles and assignments, this class of fellows found themselves in a radical new hybrid situation for the duration of their placements. In true fellowship fashion, these 10 students didn't miss a beat. They jumped right in and supported their mentors and the other staff members in their units, virtually and in person, with the incredible task at hand of managing COVID. To paint a better picture, their efforts included supporting the mission to stand up hundreds of vaccine sites around the city and developing a strategic plan to engage small businesses. Thanks to the generosity of many of you watching today, we are able to continue the program with a class of 10 fellows who will start in September. It is a bit uncertain what these new fellows will be walking into come this fall, but we know, just like these current fellows, they will hit the ground running, adapt to whatever situations exist, and make meaningful contributions to their agencies and the field of emergency management. Thank you, fellows, and your supervisors for all your hard work these past 9 months. I will be watching your careers as they continue to unfold.
Terrific. There's FEMA applications at the door. No, I'm just joking. So I just want to close before Christy, I just wish you all the best. I know you guys are going to hit it out of the park no matter what you decide to do and continue. And just God bless you all and your families.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you, Commissioner/Administrator Criswell. We have 7 fellows with us today who are all going to say a few words and present. And we have 2 presenting virtually, and 1 who I believe is also defending her thesis at this very moment, and we would like her to graduate. So we are going to start with Miriam Young, who is doing a video presentation.
Hi, my name is Miriam Young, and as a John D. Solomon Fellow, I've been working with the multimedia team at the New York City Fire Department over the past year. Of course, this is no ordinary year. The COVID-19 pandemic has upended life as we know it in the city, putting an extra burden on first responders especially. There are many people who support first responders, and I've been glad to get to join one such team during the storm of the pandemic. When I started in September, I had the chance to speak with several staff and FDNY members. I was immediately struck by their dedication, energy, and positive attitude. With backgrounds in journalism, photography, video production, and more, this talented crew plays several important roles for FDNY, which I have been delighted to be a part of this year. First, they are a communications traffic controller, surfacing stories, updates, and information pertinent for FDNY members across dozens of other agencies and departments. As I've learned from my projects, what could be information overload is carefully curated and packaged into the appropriate channels to get the message across. They develop relationships with collaborators across agencies and FDNY to ensure they can act quickly and also keep their finger on the pulse of what information needs to go out when. They're also a production powerhouse. I've been so delighted to get to work on many projects this year and have kind of dazzled to see how much content the team creates. One day we'll be filming a firefighter sharing best practices and reinforcing safety protocols from a recent fire. The next day we're producing a podcast to spotlight the work of female firefighters. I've had the chance to help with the production of lots of different pieces of content, drafting scripts for podcasts, helping to create interview questions for videos, as well as doing some writing for different content pieces that have been shared. In both sharing best practices or updated protocols and celebrating the stories of FDNY members across the city, it feels like to me that the multimedia team acts almost as the keepers of this collective wisdom and history of this long-standing institution in New York City. Before I joined the fellowship, I thought of emergency management more as the immediate response to an acute catastrophic event. The COVID-19 pandemic has proven to be a different kind of emergency, one that is global, affecting everyone in some way, and one that is more of a marathon than a sprint. It requires sustained energy, focus, and ultimately teamwork and trust to overcome. Thankfully, these are the very things FDNY is good at. Seriously, I feel like I have met more marathon runners in the past year than in my entire life. It is a very fit group of people. So I hope that we're out of the woods of COVID-19 soon, but until we are, it's been inspiring to get to be part of a team who is working to battle the pandemic with one of the most potent antidotes, information. And I am very grateful for the chance to be a fellow this year and have learned so much.
I think Jim is also a marathon runner, so maybe in a former life you were FDNY. We will now hear from Elizabeth Shaw at the American Red Cross.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. So in my fellowship placement with the American Red Cross Greater New York, I worked closely with the staff and volunteers of the New York City Disaster Action Team, which operates 24/7 to respond to local disasters under the leadership of Wiki O'Brien, one of my supervisors in this role. So when I started in September, I worked closely with the team to develop sort of next versions of tools to assist with their virtual service delivery as they were operating primarily virtual. And we pulled from the tools of virtual disaster relief operations and from in-person DAT training And we created a new chat through Microsoft Teams that allowed us to more easily share screens, to use audio and video more easily for training purposes, to help answer questions, and so the team could communicate well with each other on shift. It was particularly essential for bringing on and training new disaster action team volunteers throughout the pandemic. And it also laid the foundation for training for a new software rollout that occurred nationally across all disaster action teams across the country. So although this was a great tool to help assist with that training, it itself was a new tool that required training for adoption. So we created group trainings, short one-on-one trainings, and created guide videos and documents for reference to help adopt this new platform. And we also developed an updated training for our supervisors to help mirror the in-person dynamics that occurred prior to COVID, where new DAT trainees would learn by observing an experienced supervisor and then by doing it themselves with the supervisor observing and supporting them. So we were able to create a virtual version of shadowing through screen sharing and three-way calls so that our new trainees could continue to learn in that way with the mentorship of experienced supervisors. In addition to these tools and these trainings, I assisted with volunteer engagement. So I helped coordinate the annual Share the Red event, which is a fabulous volunteer engagement event. And we created the first virtual version of that with events, a shared cookbook with recipes from volunteers across the greater New York region, and a shared Spotify playlist. And addition to these, I had the opportunity to observe and work with Raul Rivera Nunez, the other supervisor for this role in the Information and Planning Department, and learned how to distill and disseminate crucial information across different departments in Red Cross. And I want to finish by noting that I said we throughout my presentation because although these are projects that I did help put together and implement, I could not have done it without the guidance and wisdom and knowledge of everyone on the Red Cross team. So I would like to end by thanking Wiki O'Brien, Raul Rivera Nunez for their mentorship, for everyone, all of the staff and the volunteers at Red Cross Greater New York who have been so generous with sharing their knowledge and information with me. I'd like to thank NYSM and the Solomon family for this unique opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I want to note the Red Cross is the only non-city agency that participates in the program. That's because here in emergency management, we kind of treat them like a city agency, whether they want to be or not. But they are a terrific partner, and they've been with us, and especially Wiki, since for a very long time. And so we're really thrilled to round out our program, having one of the premier nonprofits with us. And I believe also that John was involved with the Red Cross, so it kind of brings it all. It's a very small emergency management world, so everything kind of intertwines. Our last virtual presenter is Gina Massari, who worked at the New York City Department of Education this year.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Gina, and I had the pleasure of being this year's fellow at the Department of Education's Office of Emergency Management. So this has been my first experience working in government, and I must say I'm hooked. The fast-paced and ever-changing nature of emergency management, especially during a pandemic, meant that every day really brought with it a new problem to solve. I had the opportunity to regularly be on calls with important stakeholders, CBOs, and city leaders involving everything from winter weather advisories to flood mitigation planning, to summer cooling centers, to PPE needs for schools. A major part of the DOE's Office of Emergency Management focuses on making sure school sites are in compliance to provide shelter for all New Yorkers. I was able to shadow the Disability Access and Functional Needs team on a number of occasions as they traveled to different school sites, ensuring that buildings met all ADA requirements, and as we drafted extensive reports when construction was deemed necessary and worked with contractors to execute those plans. During my time in the fellowship, school sites also, as we know, became primary points of distribution for COVID vaccines. This allowed me to participate in a truly amazing logistical feat. So figuring out which school sites would be the best options for vaccine hubs in certain areas of the city. I visited numerous buildings with DOE and DOH staff, touring sites, and trying to determine which buildings had the most ideal layouts for accessible and successful distribution. I was also able to work on continuity of operations planning materials for different DOE sites, with special attention being placed on this new norm of working from home. Because of the fellowship, I really have a new appreciation for just how much planning goes into keeping New York City healthy, happy, and functioning. So finally, I just want to take a moment to thank the Solomon family for such a wonderful opportunity. This experience will surely inform my path going forward in public service, and it really has been such a bright spot in this otherwise strange pandemic year. I also want to thank everyone at NYCM and give a special shout out to Amanda, Erica, and Janelle for the fantastic programming for us fellows and for all of their support this past 9 months. And lastly, I just want to give a big thank you to my supervisors, Keith and Lillian, and the entire Office of Emergency Management at DOE, who I feel so lucky to have worked with and to have learned from. Thanks again.
Thank you. We'll now turn to our fellows that are here in person. And we're going to start with Sheikh Hussein, who worked at the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. So a pretty quiet, right, unassuming year. So please come up. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sheikh Hussein. It was not quiet, unfortunately. So I've been working in the Office of Emergency Preparedness and Response in the New York City Health and Mental Hygiene Department. Like most of you, this is my first time working in a government agency. So part of the lessons learned was, how it works and learning how a big department such as the health department works and how the different structures, layers there are. So that part was very exciting to me and very interesting for me to learn. But also the last 9 months have been marked by being involved in the COVID-19 response. As part of that, I was able to sit into ICS meetings where I got to see in person, real time, how, decisions are made during a pandemic. I was also, most importantly, part of history when I got to volunteer at vaccination hubs and see, people walk in and get very excited about this moment in history and get their vaccine. So that was something that I think I would remember for a long time. But I'm also proud of working with the faith sector here in New York City and working to create a vaccine hesitancy webinar where they were able to provide information to the faith sector where they may not be willing to get vaccines. So that I was also very proud to work on. And lastly, I was also able to create a report on the Muslim faith sector, which is very close to my heart here in the city, and kind of understand and learn their needs when it comes to emergency response and management here in the city. So, but lastly, I just wanted to take the time to thank the fellowship program, the Solomon Fellow, and my supervisor to giving me the time to learn and grow, especially during a very challenging time. So thank you for that.
Thank you. We'll now hear from Andrew Wasserman, who was at the New York City Department of Environmental Protection.
Hey everybody, I'm Andrew Wasserman. I'm currently an urban planning master's candidate at Hunter College, set to graduate this month, which is wild. So I was placed at New York City Department of Environmental Protection on the emergency management team at the Bureau of Water and Sewer Operations, Field Operations. And it was a great experience being able to work in the office with the team and really being able to just observe everything that goes into keeping the water flowing within New York City. I was able to take part in, some things in the office, improving capabilities on Microsoft Teams, participating in some tabletop exercises and some trainings related to hurricane readiness. But I think the most memorable part was being able to go out in the field with Neil and Nevin, the emergency managers on the team, and being able to observe what happens when water mains break, when there's sewer blockages, and see all the coordination that happens between the contractors, the people who are essentially digging up the street to get to the pipes to make all the repairs, and then anyone else who might be involved. There's a lot of infrastructure underneath New York City streets, be it MTA, Verizon, Con Ed, and a lot of it is very close together. So it's, a lot of people have to be very careful when making these repairs and when figuring out why it is that, the repairs need to be made in the first place. So it's been a great experience just being able to learn and observe and participate in that. So I really want to, just thank everybody here at NYCEM and the Solomon family for this great opportunity, and Natan, Nevin, and Neil, the team at DEP. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you. Next, we have from James Mitchell, who was placed at the police department.
Good afternoon. My name is James Mitchell. I was a Solomon Fellow this year, placed with the New York City Police Department's Auxiliary Police Section. For those of you who don't know, the New York City Police Department's Auxiliary Police Section is an all-volunteer force. They serve as the eyes and ears of the city and supplement what the police department does in their daily operations. They also participate in special community projects and initiatives throughout the city, and basically help wherever they can. During the fellowship, I had the opportunity to attend training sessions with them. I also had the opportunity to assist with a graduation promotion ceremony for the auxiliary police officers. As somebody who's new to the field of emergency management and coming from an emergency services background in fire and EMS, this was beneficial to me because I had the opportunity to also add a little bit of a law enforcement take on emergency management and how that partnership works out for a successful operation. I wanted to take the time to thank Sergeant Lewis from the Auxiliary Police Section. I also wanted to take the time to thank the Solomon family and the staff here at NYCEM for the past several months. It's been one of the greatest opportunities I've ever had. Thank you.
Thank you, James. We'll now hear from Daniel Sorick, who worked in the Emergency Operations Center here at Emergency Management. Is this your first time in the Emergency Operations Center?
I was going to say, actually, we have been in the Emergency Operations Center, but it's now the virtual EOC. So first of all, I just want to say thanks to Robert Cohen, Megan Conway on the EOC team, and also Brady Richards, who is normally part-time, who together made this experience really valuable. Like I was mentioning before, this is the Emergency Operations Center, but perhaps only part of it. Hopefully it'll be a more engaged part in the future, but throughout the year we were absolutely activated live virtually, and also doing a number of longer term sort of planning projects. And so, for example, these included, number one, physician task books. So in response to a lot of feedback given by numerous NYCEM employees asking for how more transparency could be achieved in order to facilitate their careers and their advancement, the EOC, working with a number of different ESF and EOC functions, has now essentially rolled out more than 10 types of physician task books, which essentially are very clear, transparent documents that say how NYCEM or emergency manager employees can climb to the next section. So we went through a very extensive process with the training and exercise team, along with numerous counterparts, to develop these task books that we think will help to facilitate the advancement for employees all the way up to almost the assistant commissioner level. Second opportunity I had, which I was definitely very fortunate to be a part of, is drafting my own sort of exercise, which involved a cyber incident disrupting an emergency management capability during a winter weather activation. So this was definitely a really interesting process to be able to collect feedback on this from the EOC team, as well as other people involved with training and exercises, and hopefully we'll roll that out soon. And then I would also just say throughout the year, it's definitely been very enjoyable to be able to see firsthand, even virtually, how, for example, the EOC, along with other EOC functions, respond to things such as one of the hardest winter weather storms that New York City has experienced in recent years, along with another product we created to help improve the shadowing process after receiving feedback through surveys that essentially requested additional sort of investment in these areas and additional guidance on how to improve that kind of experience. Altogether, really appreciated the experience throughout the year. And again, thank you, Robert and Megan, again, for facilitating such a great year. And congratulations to all the other Solomon Fellows and the rest of the program. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll hear from Lexi Curtin, who worked at Government Relations, which happens to fall under me. So I will say Lexi is incredibly patient, not because of us necessarily, but Lexi has been watched many virtual hearings that might be 3, 4, 5 hours long, and she takes detailed notes and sends them out and answers all our questions. So whatever you do in the future, hopefully that helps you along, but we appreciate all of your thoroughness in that project, so we didn't have to do it.
Hello, everyone. I will get to the hearings, but we'll first start out with this opportunity has been really important and incredible for me as someone who's new to New York. I just moved in the fall of 2019, and it was definitely a jumping in point to understand, okay, what are the 5 boroughs? Like, very basic. So this opportunity was really great to start from there and then grow into the sheer quantity and number of elected officials the city has. So it's like starting from 0 and then ending at like 1,000. So part of that process was first in the external affairs component, which involved a lot of going to community board meetings weekly, engaging with the community, and kind of giving sort of an overview of what NYCEM is doing and how that affects the very, very local level, and then all the way up to the legislative affairs, which is very high level, first attending lots of council hearings, which has been interesting in developing a lot of subject matter knowledge on certain spaces. So that could have been researching how to provide backup power for hospitals, for adult care facilities, et cetera, but also thinking about how the city goes about like language acquisition, language like translating different types of functions for people around the city so they can know what's going on during COVID or during any crisis in particular. And then lastly, also, how do we inform and engage elected officials in a way that allows them to know all the amazing stuff that everyone here at NYCM does, but also how to engage with them in any type of issue, big or small. So part of that process was the ability to write an elected official one-pager that comes directly from our elected official guide as a way to sort of give a very brief overview, but hopefully informative, to provide them with just a way to understand what NYCM does and how we can help them in emergency situations. And then lastly, building up the own team here at NYCM. The first couple weeks here on the job, I did a training for some of the EA team on community boards and how that if they could attend those community board meetings, what they would say and sort of that process. And it was something that was very unfamiliar to me at the time, but hopefully it helped in some way provide just a background on that type of work. Also tracking everything, all of our types of engagements that we have with community and with elected officials, tracking that over time. So all of this is to build both external, internal, and then my own personal preparedness in a lot of ways, and then also a foundation for all the incredible things that go on in New York City. So I've learned so much, and I truly believe I was part of the best team at NYCM, and I'm incredibly grateful to Abby and Brian for helping me develop my skills and allowing me to kind of go for the things that I want to do, so I really appreciate that. I also want to thank Rachel and Yoka and Christina, who provided expert leadership throughout my time here, and hope that I can one day follow in their footsteps. So thank you so much to everyone and to the Solomon family as well.
And now I want to bring up Colin Ryan, who works in strategic partnerships, which is another group that I get to work with. And so our Thursday morning calls, when he would report out on the tabletops and the different work he was doing. So I know that all the fellows worked hard, but these two I was able to see a little more close up. So I personally appreciate everything you did to make us look good in front of our boss. He's wondering who's going to do the work next.
Thanks, Christina. Hi, everybody. My name is Colin Ryan. I'm the fellow for Strategic Partnerships, which was formerly Public-Private Initiatives, but I think this is a more fitting name. What we do is reach out with our private partners to make sure they're resilient in the face of disaster. I also, this department was also the one who, had control over the fellowship, so I knew a lot of the insider scoop about what was going on week to week, which was fun. But some other, activities that I was leading on was the tabletop exercises, which Christina had mentioned. These were scenarios to guide private partners through, potential disasters and how their plans might be able to respond to them, the efficacy of these plans. And they also came with facilitators' guides so that they could guide themselves through these scenarios without the assistance of NYCM. We provide a lot of materials for our private partners. Another, big initiative that I was supporting on was the industry network. It was a new, communication and outreach strategy for our private partners to make sure that we can reach as many businesses as possible. So that culminated also in a presentation to some key stakeholders, and I'm really excited to see where that takes off in the future. Unfortunately, it's kind of out of my hands now, but I'm sure it's going to really go pretty far. I have high hopes for that. And, lastly, I was also working on the Coffee Connections, which is a big part of the John D. Solomon Fellowship, which is just, annually the fellows meet up with alumni, this year was virtually, of course, and just talk and network to get some more insight about the, public service. So yeah, this is a really great experience, and so I just want to say thank you to Ira and Christina for being a really supportive team, as well as Amanda and Erica, as well as Janelle, who was with us for a portion of the year, for being, really engaging and, great people to work with. So it's been a really amazing experience, and thank you, everybody.
our 10th fellow is ML Kilkelly, who was with the Risk Reduction and Recovery Bureau.
Hi, I'm soft-spoken, so I'm taking off my mask. I'm Emma Kilkelly. I've been the Solomon Fellow with the Risk Reduction and Recovery Bureau since September. And for background on the Bureau, it's newly formed. It was formed, I think, last summer as an expansion of the Hazard Mitigation and Recovery Unit to strengthen recovery planning and mitigation in the emergency preparedness cycle. And I'm a planning student at Rutgers, where I focus a lot on resilience planning and hazard mitigation. And I think the most important thing that I've gotten out of this experience is about how wrong I am about everything. I am somebody with an environmental science background, so to me, numbers and science are so important, and if you just get the information out to people, they're going to make the right decision, they're going to know what's going on, they're going to be confident in what they're doing. That's just not the case, and it's been amazing working with Melissa and the Bureau and learning how they do that, how they work with such ridiculously technical stuff and dice it down so that anybody can approach it. And that really brings me to the things that I've been able to contribute to with the fellowship over the past several months. So the big thing has been updating the hazard mitigation site, which, if you're familiar with hazard mitigation plans, they're often hundreds of pages long and like impossible to get through. As a student, I've read many. They're boring. The site is not, and I highly recommend you check it out. If you ever have the spare 20 minutes, you'll probably spend 40 because it's actually really easy to get through. And then related to that is the Community Risk Assessment Dashboard, which is kind of an extension of the hazard mitigation plan. That plan provides city-level data. The Community Risk Assessment Dashboard takes it even more local, provides community district-level data, which was something that stakeholders really wanted when they were going through the hazard mitigation planning process. So through that, I've worked with the GIS team and Melissa, Yuri, and Shraddha to put out some new indicators, and also we're hopefully very soon launching the winter weather hazard profile, which is super exciting. As another project that I've been working on, again related to the dashboard, has been taking the Community Risk Assessment Dashboard and making it even more local, even more usable for people who have maybe even less of a background with hazard mitigation, don't really know where to start when they're thinking about hazard data and risk indicators. So that's the community risk reports, and that's the little screenshot I've got up here because I was mostly remote and don't have any cool pictures of me doing anything. But what that is basically it takes data from the dashboard using GIS, getting to really exercise my GIS muscles. But it takes all of that data and that information and provides a lot of context and kind of simplifies it like, this is what you're looking at. This is why you should care, and here's a million more resources for you to learn more. So it's been really fun, really frustrating sometimes because it's GIS, but really amazing to learn what I think like makes sense and it's usable and helpful is not to everybody else. So again, learning how wrong I am about a lot of things. And then the final thing that I've contributed to has been sitting in on lots of meetings for the COVID-19 recovery framework and also helping out a little bit on the COVID-19 weekly data dashboard. As a planner and doing my graduate experience mostly remote, I didn't think I was going to have the opportunity to even witness the planning process happen before me. So having the opportunity to like sit in all these meetings and listen to what city agencies were doing and wanted to change in the long term was really incredible. And also the data dashboard is really cool. If you guys still have access to your NYCM emails, I highly recommend checking it out. It's bi-weekly now, but it's amazing what the team does to take all these indicators to kind of highlight like, where are we in the recovery process? It's again, taking a lot of information and saying what's usable for our partners. So to wrap up, congrats to all the fellows. It's so cool to hear what everybody has been doing, and a big thank you to Melissa and the Bureau, and also Yuri and Shraddha and GIS for all their help. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Emma. So that is our fellowship class for 2021. Thank you, all of you, for your amazing work, enthusiasm over the last year, and we're super excited for you to join our alumni network and come back in the future in new roles. Now I will turn it over to Jim Solomon, who may have 2 or 3 words to say.
It is possible I may have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. I think I would be remiss if I didn't share, fellows, what I have been, the texts that I've been receiving. You guys are dazzling, and you have dazzled the virtual world that is out there with your presentations. And I thought you should know what people are saying behind your back. Really, you're extraordinary. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone out there. On behalf of my brother John's family, I have the privilege of congratulating the terrific 10 John D. Solomon Fellows. We are joined today via streaming by many across the country, including some of John's nearest and dearest. They include our parents, Ann and Dick, John's wife, Abby, and their remarkable daughters, Sarah and Rebecca. Welcome, and thank you to everyone for tuning in. On behalf of my family, I want to begin by expressing our profound gratitude to FEMA's Administrator, Deanne Criswell, a great friend of the fellowship program, for honoring John with her kind words. While we were sad to see Deanne depart for Washington, our city's loss is the nation's gain. On behalf of my family, I also wish to extend a warm welcome to the newly appointed NYCM Commissioner Scrivani. Commissioner, we are thrilled to have you join our extended Solomon family. And I'd also like to thank First Deputy Commissioner DeMora for your always warm remarks, and above all, for your more than 30 years of service to the city. Hard as it is to fathom, it has been 10 years since we lost our beloved John. John was just 47, the same age, it turns out, as Alexander Hamilton, and I've thought often of the words sung by Eliza in the musical, "And when you're gone, who remembers your name, who keeps your flame, who tells your story?" There are so many in this room, be it in person or virtually, who have told and continue to tell John's story, be it by recounting his wit and clapping laughter, his innate humanity and incomparable decency, his inspiring sense of self and service. As many of John's friends and family will attest, even among those who knew John extremely well, few of us fully grasped John's passion and purpose within emergency preparedness and management. This fellowship sprang from a desire to keep alive John's flame within this realm and to help tell this part of John's story. At last year's virtual graduation, I quoted Craig Fugate on John's approach to emergency preparedness and engagement. Mr. Fugate, as many of you know, was the head of the Federal Emergency Management Agency during the Obama administration, and he spoke at the graduation of the first ever class of John D. Solomon Fellows back in 2013. And as an aside, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out FEMA has a staff of more than 11,000 and a budget of $29 billion. That the current and past heads of FEMA have made it a priority to participate in the fellowship's graduations underscores the belief that the John D. Solomon Fellows are our future leaders in government, particularly in emergency management. During this school year, Mr. Fugate generously met via Zoom with the current class of fellows. And I wanted to share with you some of what he said about John. Quote, "If you've never met John," Fugate told the fellows, "if you've always wondered about his legacy, John was just somebody for whom emergency management was not his chosen profession, but after 9/11, it became his passion." Fugate continued, "John helped shape, a discussion that too often treated the public as a liability, to be talked at. John made it a two-way conversation that recognized the public is actually part of the team. The last time I ever got to see John," Fugate shared with the fellows, John came to a conference I was at in Washington, D.C. He was going through treatments. He'd gone into a bit of remission, but he was not well. But he felt that he had to be there. He was interviewing me on all things that we were trying to do. The questions were not softballs. He was really probing. But the thing that I walked away with was that John was passionate about changing the outcome. He wasn't accepting of the status quo because he knew too much was at stake, close quote. Indeed, as the events of the past year have laid bare, there is so much at stake. The John D. Solomon Fellowship Program can be traced to two individuals who have tirelessly and lovingly kept alive John's flame for emergency preparedness and citizen engagement as they share it too. They are Deputy Commissioner Christina Farrell and Assistant Commissioner Ira Tenenbaum. These two former peers and friends of John's are the brains and brawn, and I'm not saying which is which, behind the John D. Solomon Fellowship Program in collaboration with their amazing deputy, Amanda Krabchick. Together, they assembled this year yet another extraordinary class of fellows and mentors and sustained the program through this very challenging time. In the way of background, our 10 fellows this year graduated from colleges from coast to coast, from Walla Walla to Kalamazoo, Binghamton to Lexington. The 10 fellows are currently attending graduate programs at 7 area universities: Baruch, Columbia, Hunter, John Jay, NYU, Parsons, and Rutgers. Their graduate degrees are in subjects ranging from transdisciplinary design to socio-medical sciences. To our terrific 10 fellows, listening to you describe your wonderful experiences this year, no doubt it occurred to many on this stream that the person who would have been most eager to hear your exploits and celebrate your achievements would be John. While none of you fellows knew John personally, in having shared your flame, you've kept John's burning bright. Through your passion for public service, your public engagement and ensuring that they are part of the team, you are not accepting the status quo. Each of you exemplify what made John, John. In your notion of citizenship and of collaboration, Alexandra Lexi, which you brought to every endeavor this year, from helping draft testimony for city council hearings to updating your colleagues on local initiatives safeguarding our city. Lexi, your efforts help to ensure that emergency management is a coordinated effort of many stakeholders. Andrew, like my brother, your rigor and resolve are a potent combination, as is your ability to, as you describe it, openly listen. Your knowledge and curiosity honed during prior stints at the New York Times and Turner Broadcasting enabled you to make the most of your fellowship. In plumbing the depths of our city's water infrastructure system, you won over your colleagues at the Department of Environmental Protection. Colin, as with John, you discovered that no emergency is too small. As you wrote on the fellowship blog, you came to learn, and I'm quoting here, even minor emergencies can touch many lives and deserve a comprehensive response, and that emergency management is not a figured-out science. It requires an openness to new ideas and a willingness to adapt, close quote. Thank you, Colin, for your openness and your willingness. Daniel, as I told you at the start of the fellowship, John would have been gobsmacked by your proficiency in 7 languages: English, French, German, Spanish, Hebrew, Chinese, and Russian. But it has been your enthusiasm for the tasks at hand that is most reminiscent of John. Quote, I knew that working for a city like New York would be eye-opening, Daniel wrote, but not until I began the fellowship did I fully appreciate how true this would be, close quote. Daniel, your sense of awe and admiration at the immense responsibility shouldered by our emergency shouldered by our emergency managers is just as how John felt. Your work at NYCEM's Readiness Unit proved to your colleagues that you too are capable of carrying the load. Elizabeth, you share John's passion for connecting with people in need, born of an understanding of the importance in asking the right questions. Your effort and initiative during your fellowship at the American Red Cross, helping to implement a new pandemic-friendly communication infrastructure for their disaster action teams, are a testament to your extraordinary sense of civic mindedness as well as your immense talent. Emma, John would have admired your fellowship journey at NYCEM's Risk Reduction and Recovery Unit. Emma wrote on the fellowship blog, quote, "Before starting at NYCEM, if you asked me about resilience, a core theme of practically all of my classes, my first thought would be the physical environment, like green infrastructure, solar panels, or living shorelines. What would not have come to my mind, making sure New Yorkers have food on their shelves, or teaching older New Yorkers how to use tablets so they can video call their loved ones. This fellowship taught me how resilience is really an active social process. Emma, expanding one's classroom knowledge through in-the-field experiences, connecting policies with humanity is at the very heart of what we hope for in creating a fellowship in John's name. Your eagerness to go above and beyond bespeaks a bright future in whatever you pursue." Gina, John would have not only admired the depth of your commitment to others, but also your special way of communicating it. Of her experience at the Department of Education, Gina wrote on the Fellows blog, quote, "Previously, my perception of working at a government agency was primarily shaped by the TV show Parks and Recreation. Well, there are some accurate comparisons to be made," she continues, "mainly that I'm laughing each day with a great group of new coworkers, but I'm also learning a ton on the job. To say that this is an interesting time to be working at the Department of Education is a huge understatement," close quote. Indeed, Gina, it has been, and I know your colleagues in DOE's Emergency Management Unit are deeply grateful for your contributions and your good humor. Miriam, John would be so admiring of your service and sacrifice, both of which are a family trait. As you've shared, your husband is an ER doctor who contracted COVID-19 tending patients, and that your impetus in doing this fellowship was, in part, to answer the question, but who supports the first responders on the front lines of such emergencies? Through your fellowship with the multimedia group at FDNY, you've said that you found an answer, experiencing firsthand how they ably countered confusion and fear. While I know you are deeply appreciative of the sacrifice and service of your colleagues at FDNY, please know they feel the same about you. Sheikh, John would be inspired by your sustained commitment to inclusiveness. Your colleagues at the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene were the beneficiaries of your prior work, including in the ER, where you have served diverse immigrant communities. In the past, you've reflected on how socio-cultural background impacts an individual's health and access to resources, championing the need for culturally competent services. By witnessing these disparities in action this year and in bringing your lived experiences to the field, we truly believe you will help create solutions for these disparities. And last but certainly not least, James, John would have been inspired by your example. He's not the only one. For many years, James has been a volunteer firefighter, EMT, back in his hometown in Orange County, New York. In his fellowship application, James wrote, quote, "Public service is doing the right thing when no one is looking. The ability to help people on their worst day is very important to me." James continued, quote, "Having a mild case of cerebral palsy, I have faced a number of challenges that I've had to overcome. As a firefighter EMT, I hope my story can motivate others dealing with disasters and personal challenges. Indeed you have, James. Thank you, James, for your service and your example. And so, John D. Solomon Fellows, if there's just one thing I hope you will take from my remarks today, just one, it's this: thank you. First and foremost, thank you for your service. Thank you for sharing your flame and for writing us into your stories. And thank you for enabling us to glimpse aspects of John's. Thank you, mentors, for your example, for devoting your time and selves to the fellows, and most especially to John's beloved New York City, particularly during this time. Thank you, John D. Solomon alumni, for your presence online out there and your ongoing support of the program. Thank you, Christina, Ira, and Amanda, for a fellowship program genuinely worthy of its namesake. And finally, a huge thank you to John's extended family and friends around the country for your unwavering love and support of this deeply meaningful undertaking, and for always honoring John's name, sustaining John's flame, and telling John's story. I look forward to being with all of you next May 2021, hopefully in person. Stay safe and be well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. So this brings us to the end of our graduation. Again, why don't we give our fellows one more hand? Thank you for everything. And as everyone has said, we are very excited to see where you guys go and how we can support you. And, when we end up working for you one day, we'll remember that it all started here. For everyone online, thank you for joining us. We will send out, there is a press release that will be going out about this event that we will send out in addition to a copy of this taped graduation. So if you want to see another part, hear my jokes again, or you want to share it with someone who wasn't able to get on, we'll be sending that in the coming days. And for all the fellows, as I mentioned, we will go down and do some headshots, and we also have a COVID-friendly boxed lunch that people can partake of. So thank you to everyone, and also I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you to Tori Rowe, our technology guru. He knows when we're doing an event here, I'm like, nope, get Tori. Tori's the only one that will keep this all moving, and I think we did 6 or 7 practices with him. That was yesterday. No, I'm just kidding. So thank you, Tori, for keeping everything moving so we could all be virtually together. So thank you all.